Good morning, everybody. Rice Lake Liaison Officer Andy, Officer Andy, and Rice Lake Area School District's Stacia Cross are our very special guests today. Thursday, March 2nd, 2023. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and we're streaming today's live show on our Facebook page as well as on our YouTube channel. So however you may be watching, welcome and thank you for joining us. A special thank you to some of our recent guests on our shows, including Wisconsin's 25th District Senator Romaine Quinn, Wisconsin's 7th Congressional District Representative Congressman Tom Tiffany, Constitutional Conservative candidate for Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice Dan Kelly, and of course, Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald, who joins me every Tuesday for our weekly Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy show. You can watch a recording of those and all of our previous live shows on our Facebook page, on our website at DrydenWire.com, or on our YouTube channel. But today, we're chatting with Rice Lake Liaison Officer Andy, and Rice Lake Area School District's Stacia Cross. Good morning to both of you.
Morning.
So I love this. I'm so excited. We were talking about this on this week's Positive Tuesday show at the end when we were talking about what's coming up this week. I said, yeah, we're going to have you guys on. And instead of talking about what, I'm like, I don't know. I said, I think it's about truancy, but I don't understand really what that even means. So I can't wait because I'm going to learn so much stuff today, I think. So first, I want to get to know a little bit, and for people who don't know the two of you, give you a chance to talk about that a little. But first, kind of a preview. Stacia, you and I have been kind of talking about doing this show for a couple of months, but between Officer Andy's schedule and yours and mine, it's been a while, but we finally are doing it. So give us a quick preview. What are we talking about today, and why is whatever we're talking about today important?
We're talking about truancy. Truancy is when students are absent from school. So it affects a lot of things. It doesn't just affect the home life. It affects the school and the student personally. And it's not something that's widely talked about. And it is obviously very important. We want an educated society. So that's kind of what we're going over, because it's not a conversation that a lot of people are having right now.
Okay. Officer Andrew, do you agree with her assessment?
100%.
Oh, shoot.
When I got into this position, I think this is my 5th year, they told me I was handling attendance right off the bat. And when I realized what it was overwhelming, because there are so many kids that are struggling for whatever reason to get into school and to be there. It's being able to have Stacia here and to help out to pretty much be the spearhead for the whole thing is huge. But I agree 100% with her.
Okay. I like more conflict. That's better for shows. Like, disagree with each other, and we can have an argument. So for people who don't know either of you, Officer Andy, and if that's okay, I'm going to refer to you as Officer Andy. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about you, because you're on talking about this for a reason. Who are you?
My name is Andy Jondreau, and that's how you pronounce my last name. I've been in law enforcement for, I think this is my 19th year in law enforcement, but 15th year here at Rice Lake PD. 5 years ago, I was given the awesome opportunity to be the school liaison officer. I had a general idea what it would be about, but I didn't realize it would be as awesome of a spot as I could be in. I know people love canine handlers and all this and that, but I think for any officer to be assigned to this position is like the best position that they would ever work for.
Why?
You get a chance to build relationships with kids and kind of break down the creation that police are bad, that all we're out here to do is write tickets and get people in trouble and take them to jail. They get to see a different side of law enforcement, even though I'm not wearing like full duty uniform. It's an opportunity for them to see an officer as somebody that legitimately is there to help them. Not that my partners aren't legitimately there to help them,
yeah,
but for them to kind of be able to see that, we're people. I have no problem throwing on a unicorn costume and running through the elementary schools and things like that, just for them to know that we can have fun and they can come to us for help. We're not always there to take people to jail.
I didn't know this until recently, but Sheriff Fitzgerald, during our shows, he started, I think, at the Rice Lake Police Department and had that position as well, and then he said that's the only other job that he would ever want to do again is that one. He said that's where it's at. and he's talked a lot about, and we've talked about it, and even when like Sheriff Finch has been on, and a few other sheriffs, that's the importance of that role is huge. And we could do literally a whole show just on school liaison officers. But let's get to you, Stacia. For people who don't know you, who are you?
I'm Stacia. I'm the attendance coordinator, or one of them, for the Rice Lake School District. I typically do the middle school and the high school.
Is there any reason not elementary? Is there just not a lot of
my
attendance
counterpart
issues?
Cassandra, my counterpart Cassandra does the elementary levels. So I do the older kids.
Okay, so how do the two of you know each other and work together? How does this all tie in here?
So we kind of work hand in hand. Get to visit his office and drive him nuts a lot of the time. So it's a lot of the time it's coordinating. Sometimes I have to have him come with me to a house to help get someone out of bed or get a kid to school, or go talk to somebody. Sometimes a lot of times we're meeting students together and problem solving, how we can help them. So there are a lot of different players in the truancy game,
Sure.
I think.
And you, how long have you been at the Rice Lake School District?
Since September. I was at Washburn County doing the truancy for 4 years before I went to Rice Lake.
When you say Washburn County, we don't have a Washburn County school, so were you part of a school district or the
circuit court? I was a deputy clerk, so I did the truancy there.
So this has been in your wheelhouse for a while.
Yes.
All right. Well, I can't wait to get in all of this stuff. I have so many questions already I want to ask. But first, we'll be back in 15 seconds after a word from Spooner Health.
In our patient satisfaction surveys and in conversations with patients, they appreciate the fact that staff got to know them. Staff really took their preferences into account, and they just feel grateful that they are being cared for as a person.
To learn more about our services, visit SpoonerHealth.com.
Okay, so where do we want to start? Who wants to kind of kick this off and start us in the direction that we need to go? Officer Andy, do you want to start first?
What? Me?
Well, whomever wants to start. So we know what we're talking about today, so let's kick this off. Is there a huge issue in truancy across the region? Is it nationwide, or is it just in Rice Lake? Or maybe there is an issue, but it's important that we talk about it anyway.
It's nationwide. It definitely got worse after COVID. COVID changed a lot of things. It changed the mentality. Like, I can do work from home. I can do different things without actually being in the school. So that's a constant battle. Or people got used to staying home. So now it's a lot of anxiety even getting into the school doors.
Now, are we talking about kids here, or are we talking about parents?
Honestly, both. I mean, it affected everybody differently, but typically what we deal with are the students, but it's a lot of anxiety across the board and just different reasons and issues.
And Officer Andy, how long, so it was 19 years law enforcement, 15 years at Rice Lake Police Department. I forgot to write down how long you've been the liaison officer.
This is my 5th year.
5th year. So in 5 years, what's changed from 5 years ago to today?
Stacia hit it right on the head. It was COVID. And having kids at home and getting used to that atmosphere completely changed the dynamic of kind of how they associate with school. And I know we're seeing it now, like several years later, with like some of our incoming freshmen and sophomores that were a lot younger when this happened. A lot of their stuff, they're working with peers, and their social cues and things like that were completely thrown off because they were doing like what we're doing. We're looking at someone on a screen. You can't really see the body language. They don't get the different feel.
Yeah. I'm in my boxers, by the way. No pants and nothing. Just sitting in my boxers. You don't get to see the whole picture.
And I'm at the PD.
Sure.
But I think it changed like the way a classroom feels. So a lot of kids got really comfortable with that. And the ones that were maybe on that cusp of like not quite being able to function in a classroom really well, or the ones that were kind of like borderline, I think having that, ability to be at home and be completely in their comfort zone really push them kind of towards that edge of, I can't go back and I don't know how to go back.
Okay, so are we? When I hear truancy, and what I'm understanding is that's just. I mean, technically, the definition, not going to school or missing school. Is that right, Stacia? Or what is like the definition of it ish?
Missing any or part of all the day of school.
Okay, that's kind of what I was thinking. But also, Andy, you were talking about, and actually, Stacia, you as well, that we've after COVID gotten kind of comfortable at home and working from home or doing stuff at home. But if a child is at home and they are doing their schoolwork, and if what I'm hearing, Officer Andy, we're kind of talking about social skills and not wanting to go to school, etc., and be maybe that comfort level and being around other people. But how does that tie into truancy? Because if they're at home and they're doing it, they're still, getting their education, and it really doesn't fall under truancy, though, does it?
It depends on what they're able to do. Like our district is limited with what we have for online class availability and things like that. There are some districts, and there's, I believe it's called Admentum, that we have through the school, but the school has to pay for that. It's a completely online. There is our staff doesn't even interact with the kids. It is a completely online teaching or educational experience. So the kids that, would really struggle with that, and how Stacia said earlier about there's so many different moving parts for the whole attendance thing and the truancy thing. It's a case by case basis with a lot of these kids. And that's where, we get to learn about them and what works for them, what doesn't. It's a lot of trial and error. We try and keep them in the building as much as we can to get that social experience. That way, when they are out in public, they know how to act around others and they know how to interact with one another, which kind of ties in with just society in general. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but people's fuses are a lot shorter now than I think they used to be, at least kind of my opinion.
You know what?
And
I think I think I have noticed that.
And just kind of the overall tolerance for differences or, people that might not be the same as you seems to be less. So I don't know. And like I say, that's just completely my opinion, nothing of the police department or the school. But I think a lot of the social networking and social learning happens when they're in with their peers.
Oh, 100%. And it is great. I don't want to take anything away from the ability to, if let's say a child is sick, but they can still do things. When the three of us were growing up, if you're sick, you're sick. Maybe your parents stopped and got your homework. If you're going to be out of school for a couple, 3 days because of a sickness, they'll stop and grab a few things. But now at least you can do something. So I think it's nice when needed. Certainly. I don't think anyone can disagree with that. But when you start relying on it, and there's some things that, you can't really do gym over Zoom. It's like, all right, this is gym class. Go do something. Are they really doing that? Probably not. So I understand from your point, Stacia, that is the truancy in the attendance. You work at the school district. That's literally, that is your job, is to pay attention to this and have kids there. Is there something that's tied into this? Is it a funding or something? If you have to hit a certain percentage, is there any other than we just want our kids here at school as often as possible because, education in social skills and development, there's 100 reasons why. But is there other reasons where, okay, if we fall below a certain number, it could hurt, I don't know, funding? I doubt that's a thing, but I'm just wondering.
It's kind of all of the above. A big part of it is it's state statute. They have to be there. The school's responsible for making sure that the kids get an education and making sure that they are adhering to the statute of the amount of days that they have to be in school or the amount of instructional time. As far as absences and truancy and absenteeism, when it comes to that, I do believe that there are grants that it does affect as far as school report cards. So, and those grants can be used to get more people in for mental health or counselors. So I think it affects a lot of things across the board. And I don't know that everybody realizes that and how much work it goes into, especially by Officer Andy and our administrators and how much they do to make sure that it's a good school. the environment is a positive and safe one, because then we do want the extra help and the funds to make sure that we have resources for our students.
And then, Officer Andy, when it comes to law enforcement, the Rice Lake Police Department, you're there, so we're talking about truancy, and it's important for the kids, and everything we've already talked about, and more that we will. How does this play into, like, why is this such a big issue for you, or maybe more specifically the Rice Lake Police Department or law enforcement in general? Where do you guys come in on this, where this is something we're very passionate about from your perspective and through your filter as a law enforcement person?
So a lot of it kind of ties in with delinquency later on, or how students form themselves into constructive members of society when they're not held accountable for something small. And I kind of relate it to basic training in the military. They start you off with making your bed. The smaller things, if you can't get those things down, something as small as showing up or being expected to show up to work every day or show up to school every day, that ties in later on with employers and the community in general not having a workforce that they can depend on, that's going to be there on time, that's going to do the work that's expected of them, and to be constructive members and contributing members to society. So that kind of ties in with kids aren't held responsible for their actions. They're going to up the ante. They're going to try and do something maybe a little more brazen next time. Oh, I got away with that. Mom and dad didn't really care too much. Oh, the PD didn't care. I'm going to, try and up the game a little bit until it gets to where it's, bad, really bad stuff.
Is there a link that you're aware of, or if there any data? And if there isn't data, that's fine. But just in your experience and your knowledge that ties that there's a direct link or a higher likelihood, maybe that's a better way to say it, of truancy and then crime, whether it's as juveniles or maybe as adults, or drugs or something. There's a kind of a link there between, we typically find that kids that are there's truancy, not all the time. It isn't necessarily like if you are truant or have truancy issues, then you're going to, commit felonies your rest of your life. Right. But is there a link of any kind there?
I don't have any data of it, but I would put my pension on it that there is. And that's a lot of the kids that, like, I would have, we do a daily shift log. A lot of the names that are in there, we see are my patrol counterparts dealing with them a lot of times after they've left school, or even like while they're still in school. A lot of my counterparts in patrol are dealing with them outside of school. There is no doubt in my mind that there is a link between that and, negative behavior outside of the school building.
Stacia, do you think that you've been doing this for a little bit at the Rice Lake School District, but as you had mentioned earlier, Washburn County, you were doing this a lot. Where's the parents' role in this? I mean, are kids really not wanting to? I suppose any kid, if you ask them, do you want to go to school or not? Well, actually, no. Like one of my daughters, Riley, she was very upset when she didn't get to go to school. Very upset. Kenneth, he's like, whatever. I mean, if I go, I go. If I don't, I don't. But he even, like, during COVID and all that stuff, they just miss being around their friends. Yeah, they can play games and headsets and talk to each other over messaging and whatever, but it's not the same. Like, they miss their friends. But do most kids that are I'm going to repeat offenders, the ones that are oftentimes have attendance issues, do they not want to be there? Or is this a situation where parents have to take a little, I'm not sure, I'm trying to ask this really politely by not trying to throw anybody under the bus here, but can we kind of start blaming the parents on some of this? Or is it really, no, these are the kids?
It depends on it. It's situational. A lot of the kids who are habitually truant, I shouldn't say a lot, it just depends on the situation. Sometimes it can be related to issues going on in the home. Sometimes it is just the kids. The parents aren't going to drag some 6'5" senior out of their bed to try to get them to school. It just depends. It's very situational, and kind of like Andy said, sometimes it's generational too, working in the court system, you get a judge who sat on the bench or an officer who's been doing it for a long time, and they recognize the names. They maybe dealt with the parents or dealt with the guardians, and then those students are following in those footsteps. So it's kind of trying to break that mold and make them better and get them out of that cycle.
Yeah, I think Fitzy's talked about it. I think even Dad, because he was I think you both know, former Sheriff Terry Dryden, my father, when he was on as well, and I think Fitzy said it, and as well as Tracy Finch and a few others, that if you look like the jail roster, and I can't remember what percentage they put it on, but it isn't just like every week, but over a year's time, if you go back and look, I don't remember what it was. It could be like a third or a half or something. They're all the same people, right? That recidivism, that constantly going back. It's like those are the ones that we're trying to help. Like some people are going to get arrested for doing dumb things every once in a while. I'm not justifying behaviors or bad behaviors, just saying it happens. But it's the ones that are the repeat ones. Yeah, we have to stop that cycle. So this almost seems like it's because he's dealing it more from a adult point of perspective, where you guys are looking at kind of that same thing where it's the people are going to miss school every once in a while. It's fine, duh. But the ones that are constantly, it's how do we help them? So that leads me to how does a school district help them? How does a school liaison officer help them? Is there anything you can do other than going to the house and saying, parents, parent? Stacia, we'll start with you. Sorry, I should probably ask one.
No,
You're both like,
great.
I don't want to answer that question.
So it's a lot of, like I said earlier, it's a lot of team players. So the administrators, like the principals and the counselors, like everybody wears a lot of hats, especially the principals. It's like they're counselors one day, they're a mental health coordinator, they're doing everything. They're jumping through a lot of hoops to make sure the student is happy, healthy, safe. And I don't think people always realize how much they do or how much Andy does if a student comes to him. So, and I think all of us together, we try to problem solve. We want the students, like Andy said, is a lot of trial and error. And every situation is different. It's not cookie cutter. So that's what can get harder, because you can't treat every student the same. Every habitual truancy case is not the same, and it depends on what's going on. There could be trauma, there could be poverty, and we have to help with resources. It just depends. There's so much that goes into it, and that's why it should be a bigger conversation, because it's not everybody is aware of how much of an issue it is.
Officer Andy?
I would agree with that completely. You have to be able to work with the people you have, and having Stacia in this role has been absolutely tremendous because of just her attitude and she hit the ground absolutely running with this. But the resources that we have, it might be one kid is getting abused at home, and the school may not necessarily know about this, but I've kind of known the family a little bit coming up. Some of the calls that I've gone to, with parents or with other family members, and kind of know a little bit of the background for that. And actually knowing a lot of these kids' parents and having worked with them before has been a tremendous asset. And I said that getting from the jail to patrol, just getting to know these people a little bit more, you have a little bit more of a backstory, and you have that opportunity to build trust. So when we're talking about like what works for a lot of the kids, is kind of knowing what they're going home to, kind of knowing that, they might not be going home to the best situation, but when they come to you and say, I don't want to end up like mom, I don't want to end up like dad, how do I break this? Like, they're like, I know, what my name says or whatever, I want to break that. How do I do it? And the team that we have at the school is tremendous in being able to help them do that. And having a kid come to you and say that, I can think of 3 off the top of my head that have said, I don't want to grow up like my parents. I want to do something with my life. To have them, have the confidence and the comfort with me to be able to come looking to me for help. That's 99.9% of what my job is building relationships and building that trust. And it's a tremendous feeling.
Well, I wrote down a couple of things here. but you just kind of touched on it already, so I'm going to skip ahead. And I wrote down success stories. And obviously without names or specifics clearly, but I want both of you, if you can, give a success story. Something whether it was a child that came, or a student, I should say, that came and you're just talking about Officer Andy that, I don't want to, but how did that play out? So Stacia, do you have a success story? I know you've only been at the Rice Lake School District since, I think, September, you had said. But do you have a success story already? One that they came, or we kind of interjected, or we were a part of this, and the student is doing exceptionally well. Something like that.
I do. There was, or is, one that when I had first met that student, they're having a hard time. A lot of depression, a lot of hanging out in a circle with a lot of people who were depressed, and kind of opened a door. I do truancy classes. It opened a door to meeting other people, and the student is thriving now. Used to skip class in the bathroom and hide out. We'd have to play hide and go seek, see where the student is, and now they're not skipping class. They're going to class, or they're going to somebody. So we always know where they are. We know that they're safe. So it's heartwarming. Kind of like what Andy said, it feels good because you're making a difference.
Yeah. Also, Andy, do you have one that stands out?
Yes. I mean, there are several.
I can imagine.
It's just, it started out, a lot like Stacia was saying, they were really apprehensive about law enforcement in general. Their, excuse me, their family had few, if any, positive interactions with law enforcement. So, and this one started, I think, in 7th grade. But just being able to be there and, just kind of establish rapport with them, having them, 4 years later come to me with an issue that's going on at home, and being able to help them navigate through that and figure it out and be able to make it work, and then have them be happy to be at school. Because how it kind of started is school was an escape from their home life, how they were being treated at home. The only reason they were going to school, excuse me, is to get away from what was happening at home. So they were there, but not for the right reasons. So now that, we've kind of worked through that and, been able to make that happen, they want to be in school, but it's for the right reasons. Home life has changed. It's not as like butting heads. Yeah, right. It's not as toxic. It's not, they're not going home like, oh my gosh, what are mom and dad going to say about this? It's the biggest thing for that family was communication, and, just for them feeling comfortable enough to come to me later on, knowing how I had treated them, I think like a couple times in the hallway, in middle school is tremendous. So, and like Stacia said, the heartwarming part of it, if I can help one kid in my career, it's a win for me. So having several come up, I mean, I don't expect to go get hugs at the high school, or anything like that, like you do at the middle school, but it's, it's just that feeling is tremendous, and there's nothing like it.
That's interesting. You had said 7th grade. That was the story you were telling about. A student started in 7th grade, and now you just said difference between middle and high school. Stacia, I know that you had said that you kind of cover the middle school and high school. Officer Andy, I didn't ask you. Is it elementary, middle, and high school, or is it all of them?
3K through 12.
3K?
PK.
Or PK.
Oh
my goodness.
So I mean,
so how does that work? I would assume that a school liaison has to be like a chameleon, because there's no way that you can obviously have the same conversation, or I shouldn't say even conversation, but like interact. You interacting with the 2nd grader is going to be wildly different than a 7th grader, which is going to be wildly different than a 12th grader. So you have to constantly, kind of change who you are, right? Isn't that kind of, I would assume, a very important part of the job? And how do you do that?
It's actually kind of fun, because I mean, if I'm having a rotten day, the first place I go is one of the elementary schools, because they are always happy to see me. It's a hug. It's like, Officer Eddie, oh my God. And like, it's just a swarm. I don't get that when I go to the high school.
Go figure.
Right. It's not like
Teenagers, I tell you.
But just it's kind of its own little community.
Certainly it is.
With the kids and seeing them grow up. It's fun. I get to go to the elementary schools and dress like a unicorn. Hopefully, I don't think any of them are watching this, but
they better not be, or they're at home skipping.
Right. And then if you are, get your butt to school. But I'm wearing a unicorn costume tomorrow to read books to some of the kids at Tainer Elementary. I normally wear the Cat in the Hat outfit, with the hat and the bow tie and whatnot when I do the Read Across America week. But that's not exactly something that I can do going to talk to an 8th grade class about alcohol and other drug abuse. So it just depends on where I'm at. And it's actually fun. It's one of the challenges that I was kind of really worried about when I first started 5 years ago is my kids were really little then. So they were in elementary school. They were barely in middle school. And I'm like, I can relate to these kids completely because I know how I deal with my own kids. I was so terrified of the high school. I'm like, how am I going to do this? I don't even know, how to relate to them. And now, I love working at the high school. I love working at all the buildings. But coaching sports has really opened that door at the high school to build relationships because they see me in a completely different light.
What do you coach?
Track. I coach pole vault for track.
Okay. And now I think about it, you've been there for 5 years. So the good news is when you first started, all the high school kids, they're all gone anyway. So everyone that's in high school now knew you when they're all in middle school. So, hey, that's kind of nice. It's not like you're just walking in brand new because that's interesting. Right. I think that would probably be one of the biggest first challenges for a new liaison officer is the high school students.
Yeah.
Because, they know everything. And who are you?
They still do. It's just
Except now they at least know you from before because, it's been a while. But, yeah, I could see how right away get the high school, that'd be a little more challenging.
It is. But it's still fun. And, the being able to mess around with kids, joke with them and stuff in the hallways and, give them a hard time.
Let them play with your gun, stuff like that.
What's that?
Let them play with your gun.
No.
Okay. Just building trust, man. Oh, all right. So if this doesn't, a few more, and actually we have a question here from Renee we'll put up in a second. You've been there 5 years. Stacia, you've been doing this for a while. Now, where you are right now is since last year, but you've been doing this for a while. Officer Andy, you said at the beginning that it's changed a lot in 5 years you've been there, and not necessarily for the better. If this doesn't get, at the pace that we're going, what does this look like in 5 years from now?
2 years ago, had you asked me that question, I'd have been kind of a doom and gloom, like, holy cow, we're headed in the wrong direction. I would say now over the past year and a half, it's kind of like I think we sometimes refer to it as a COVID hump. The kids that were really affected by that it's starting to figure itself out again. It's almost like a bump in the road in the springtime or a frost heave. It's there. It's like, holy crap, you just nail it and you notice it every time. Now we're kind of getting towards, I think, like the June time when the road's starting to smooth out a bit. And I think we're headed back in the right direction. When things are, I would say, changing for the better now.
Well, Stacia's there. So, of course, it's going to be changing for the better because now you have Stacia.
Right. I mean, that's just right. So, but and I'm not fluffing anything. That's having her there is a tremendous asset. And that's part of the reason why I believe our district is heading back in an upward direction. And I think that's kind of nationwide. Just kind of getting past that hump and working through some of the issues that are almost the fallout of, having kids at home full time for, a year or more of their educational experience. I think it's finally getting traction and we're kind of getting back to where we were before and heading in the right direction.
Stacia, do you echo that? Because even when you started there, I'm sure you kind of looked back and see how things were going over the last 4 or 5 years before you had gotten there. Do you echo what Officer Andy is saying, that it seems as though it's getting, I don't want to say better, but we're not heading in the downward direction anymore? we even stopped just not even just stabilizing, but it looks like it's getting better. Do you agree?
I agree with what Andy said. I think that it is going to smooth out. It's still a challenge, especially with some students, but we're making strides forward. And I think part of it is a lot of the ones that were affected, at least the older students that were affected the most, they're starting to graduate. So I think that we're going to continue to see improvement going forward, because we're starting with the young ones and working with them and building those relationships. So hopefully we can smooth everything out.
Yeah. We have a question here from Renee. Brilliant question, Renee. How do you start the trust of breaking down the wall for the child and possibly the parents together, getting to the root of the issue? Whomever would like to answer that.
As far as them going to school or even like other issues, I think it's a lot of conversation and communication. If there needs to be a bridge, we can certainly help with that, because sometimes even from me, and if my parents are watching this, I'm sorry, I didn't want to talk to my parents about what was going on. I wanted someone else. I would have talked to another adult. It's just, I knew everything compared to my parents. I clearly did not. But we can certainly help with building that bridge, because as long as there's communication and we can help the student and help the parent and be the go-between, we just want what's best for everybody, especially the student. So we can certainly help with that. But communication is huge. Just communicate with the school.
Officer Andy, what are your thoughts on that?
I would agree with that 100%. Also, a lot of them will test, and what I've seen with me, they'll come to me with something and test to see, to test, am I trustworthy? Am I going to be a man of my word? When I say, I'm not here to get you in trouble, and I'm honestly not. I tell the kids constantly, I hate writing citations. I will do anything I can legally to not write a citation. And a lot of them will test that. They'll come to me with a little bit of info and try and build that trust to be, okay, he's somebody I can go to. He's not going to judge me for, something that happened, whatever number of years ago or anything like that. And it takes time. It's like anything worthwhile. It's going to take time and it's going to take work. So I feel a lot of them, are tentative right away. And they see, some of the other kids that I've known, for years, or I know outside of, my profession, they'll joke with me and do this and that. Those are the huge moments for those kids to see. Be like, oh, he is, he's not just an a-hole. He's not out in the parking lot just looking to write parking tickets, that kind of thing. But it takes a while, and it's totally worth it in the end.
You guys need to stop agreeing so much. So let me ask you, what is one thing that you guys don't agree on? And I don't care what it is. What is it?
Kit Kats.
Okay. One must like it, one doesn't?
I don't know. That's just not the one thing.
The amount of times I go to his office with something new is probably not something he enjoys, but it's the highlight of his day regardless.
So we're talking a lot about the kids that are habitual, has habitual truancy, if I'm saying that correctly, and the parents and their role and your guys' role. But what about, I'm assuming most parents and most students are the parents that know you're going to school, or most students show up for school and that isn't the issue for them. What can they do, whether it's a student or whether it's a parent? Like, what can I do if, no, my kids go to school and everything, so, that's a you guys' problem, not my problem. Is there something that I can do as a parent?
I would support parents who might be struggling. It's not always a conversation, and they're not always upfront. Not a lot of parents want to admit, no, my kid is skipping. I'm having issues at home. It's kind of like a taboo type of thing. Like, you just keep it private, but it doesn't need to be. It takes a village sometimes, and It can be a conversation. So, and especially even with the kids, talk to your kids about holding their peers accountable too. Like, positive reinforcement. Like, hey, are you having a bad day? Talk to me. Like, what can I do to help you? Because if they have a positive somebody or multiple somebodies at school, it makes a huge difference on whether they want to come or not, regardless of what's going on.
Officer Andy, I would ask you, but my assumption you're just going to say, yeah, I agree with what she said.
Oh, she's completely off. She has no idea what she's talking
Yes! All right. Now it's getting fun.
about. I would kind of add more of the, your kids going to school, they seem like everything's great. Still continue to talk to them. Still ask those tough questions, because you never know. And I can't remember where it was, and I saw this posted. You never know. Every time you greet somebody, you never know what sort of struggle they're dealing with. I can't remember where I saw that sign. Somewhere around the school, multiple times. But a lot of kids are really good at putting on a front. Everything's going great, and this and that. It's almost like a Facebook type thing, which kids don't do. Apparently, we're old. But it's still keep that communication open with them. Keep the open lines with them. Ask them how their day is. It drives my kids nuts sometimes, but when we're sitting around the table eating dinner, I ask them, I'm like, "What's something that made you laugh today?" And it kind of, I learned a lot of times about the different kids that my own kids are hanging out with. And some of them may not be the best. Some of them may not come from the greatest home, but I'm still letting them try and be that positive influence in that kid's life. If it's, they haven't had the best experience with life so far. But just to try and, maintain that communication with them. And like Stacia was saying, that's the biggest thing is, being able to talk to somebody.
Yeah. And I think for just like most parents, I know how Drush and I are, it's there's no judging, right? We believe in honesty. I've always kind of subscribed to this philosophy that I prefer to reward good behaviors rather than punish bad behaviors. So I think it's always important, if there is something positive, shower them with praise and, attaboys, because people like that stuff. And they're like, hey, I really like this. I think I'm going to keep doing this again. So I like that a lot, but really when kind of that parenting thing, you guys talked a lot about communication. It sounds like that's a big thing, but for us, it's always been just, we want to be active, involved, and engaged parents. Doesn't mean helicopter parents. Doesn't mean we're going to everything. You have a game somewhere in another city. No, that's for you, your friends, your school. That's what home games will go to, but just be involved. I think like Riley and I, when she comes home, we just have, I don't know where this started, but she comes in, I ask her, how was work? And she asks me, she tells me, and then she asks me, how was school? Obviously it's backwards, but that's how we ask each other this stuff. It's just something kind of silly that we do, but we go through everything. And one of the things that they notice too is other students, certainly. And it's, well, how do we really approach them? Because, you don't want to say, you're kind of screwing up too much. Like, that's not really our job, but they care genuinely about other people. So what advice do you give the students, like to our kids and your kids when you talk to them? What advice do you give them?
I would say keep setting a good example.
Okay.
It's that emulating the positive behavior, but also not being afraid to fail. And how a lot of kids they'll experience failure and it's just the end of the world. It's done. And seeing a friend go through some sort of failure and being there to help them through it. It's a lot of it just boils down to just being a good person.
Right. When did we stop doing that? Like, I don't care what you identify as. I don't care what I don't care. You're a human being. And so am I. Yeah. And where's your humanity? I'm sorry. I don't want to go off on that whole thing. It just drives me crazy. When did we stop doing that? I don't get it.
Well, I'll drive you nuts, and I'll agree with you on that, too.
Hey, all right. I got to agree. Last thing you had mentioned something earlier, so I wrote it down. It was just you had touched on drugs and alcohol in a reference to something else that you were kind of discussing. Is that a thing? Are you seeing more drugs and or alcohol or specific types of drugs? Obviously, we're talking about a wide range here between middle school and high school. Are you seeing anything different, Officer Andy, when we're seeing certain drugs at a younger or maybe alcohol at a younger age, or is it going the other direction? And then when we're finished with that, then Stacia, I want to ask you, how much of a role does that play in truancy? So, Officer Andy, what have you seen in the last 5 years regarding like that trajectory and how things are going there?
I would say that behaviors or poor behaviors there's a lot of direct correlation to kids using nicotine vapes and then eventually getting into the THC vapes or the carts. I never thought it would happen, but I've had a couple fifth graders with nicotine vapes that they were using and this and that. I don't know them well enough to say that their use of that is a direct correlation for their behaviors, but there are more of the kids where I don't know um, how involved the parents are or how many inquiries the parents make with behaviors, asking them, just being involved with them as much as they probably should be, and they might catch these kind of different nuances about their behaviors. Um, I have seen, and I know Mr. Bisey at the high school, Mr. Bullock, he can attest to it. Is the cart or the THC use for kids, and it's not the ditchweed that our parents smoked at wherever. That was like maybe 1%, 2% THC, involved in the marijuana. There are kids that are trying for the first time like 96, 97% pure THC, like waxes or oils or things like that, that it is having the complete opposite effect. It's not making them get the munchies or giving them that euphoric feeling. It's bringing out anxiety. It's exacerbating um, like some of the negative behaviors that are already there. They're very confrontational, or they can be very confrontational, just argumentative, and it's almost swinging it the other direction.
Yeah, that's a little odd because I don't know. I mean, I'm not a partaker in illegal drugs. I thought marijuana was supposed to be like to help with anxiety.
It depends on, and again, this is just my opinion and
Sure.
what I've seen. The the general weed smokers that I would deal with when I first started in patrol, the ones a baggie of weed and stuff like that. Those ones are usually mellow.
Yeah, a
They're
stereotypical pothead
right,
or whatever you want to refer to. Right, totally.
right, whatever whatever you refer to them to.
Right.
That the potency of THC or Delta 9 in those is so much lower than what we're having in, like people making waxes or dab, stuff like that, or some of even the vapes that are available. They're a lot more potent, or edibles, even stuff like that. You're not quite sure what effect that's going to have on them. I don't know any marijuana that's 50% THC that you can buy and put in your pipe and smoke it, so to speak, as you can going and getting a wax or trying little stuff like that and smoking it. It's that I see is having a negative effect on behaviors and things like that, because it's so strong.
Yeah, we're not talking about adults here, right? I mean, we're not saying if you're an adult and this, that, whatever. I mean, things are illegal, but that's your decision what you want to do. We're talking about kids.
Mm-hmm.
So just to be clear, we're not talking about marijuana today and adults that do. No, we're talking about like sixth graders and ninth graders, and having that amount of high percentage of whatever it was, you would say Delta 9 or whatever that stuff is, the higher percentage of that in there for kids that their brains haven't even developed yet. I'm it just anything with kids, man, just drives me crazy. Everyone, I think you can not like someone because they're Republican or Democrat, but we can all agree on one thing: don't hurt kids. And
Exactly.
we can all get behind that one, I think. Stacia, have you noticed any correlation between truancy and drugs or alcohol?
There is. I mean, we know that there are students that are using if they just don't come, if they're not sober. There's, a major correlation, but I think the bigger issue with that too is, and that's more Andy's aisle, is
Yeah.
a lot of the use and in the school. I think the students and even the ones who are truant and they're not going to school, they're getting in trouble because they're not sober, or they're doing stuff, or they're partying the night before and that not coming to school. And their brains are developing, and there's a lot of different opinions on marijuana. Some even like adults, they think it's fine, they think it's healthy, but bottom line is not okay in the school, and they're still kids. So
forget
their
that.
brains are, like you said, the brains are still developing, and students don't always think about where it came from. So like they got it from Joe Schmo down the street, and Joe Schmo put a little bit of fentanyl in it for whatever. Kid takes it, and then there's an overdose, and that's it's an ugly truth, but it's true, and they don't always think about those consequences. Or even with the gummies, or edibles, they eat too many and something happens. So, and those can be hidden, and Andy's awesome about educating. So as a parent, I would definitely get educated about that, because that is a huge issue also and can cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, and speaking of which, Officer Andy, you need to contact your peers at the Rice Lake Police Department and let them know about this Joe Schmo guy, because apparently he's putting fentanyl and stuff. So now you got a name. See, she just gave you a tip right there. Go bust that dude.
Him.
Okay.
We're on to him.
I figured. All right, last question, school days. When schools are closed, which one of you has to go to work and which one doesn't, or do you both go or you both don't? How does that work for you guys? Stacia, do you have to, I'm assuming you're an employee there, so when it's a snow day, do you have to go?
What kind of day are you talking about?
A snow day.
Snow day?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I usually don't go.
Are you supposed to go?
If I can
Are you
get in
truant?
and get down my driveway, I will go, but lately it's not been a team player.
Well,
So
it
I'll
sounds like
just have to
truancy to
hold
me.
it that way.
Officer Andy, do you when schools are closed? I mean, there's no kids there. What do you do on those days? You take the day off, or you just go patrolling? What do you do?
It varies. It drives my wife nuts, because she knows that I pretty much have a choice whether or not I go in and help. A couple of the snow days we've had, I've gone in, for part of the day to help out our patrol guys with just different crashes. And I'm expected, to do that. But I'm also, part of my contract is that I'm expected to take my days off when school is not in session. So it's kind of a balance in between helping out my coworkers when they need it. And overall, I'm still a patrol officer assigned to the schools. So ultimately it's, I'm still responsible for that kind of thing. But I'm not going to lie, the past few days I haven't been upset to get that text at 4:30 to be like, sweet, I don't need to go. So, but a lot of those days, if I have reports that I need to catch up on, I'll go into my office at the high school and catch up on reports, and a lot of the paperwork stuff that would take me away from being able to be in an elementary school for a few hours when I have to write a report instead. So there have been way too many snow days, because I don't want to do this again later on in June.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It varies.
All right. Well, thank you both for coming on. What do you guys have coming up this week, either work-wise or, personal stuff, whatever? What are you guys doing this weekend? Stacia, what are you up to?
Hosting a 70s murder mystery party.
Shut up. That sounds awesome.
It is. It's going to be fun.
How do you know what? I'm going to follow up with you on that when we're finished. I need to know more, like, how do you do that stuff? Because I love, like, my wife and I just love murder mystery things. Like the old stuff, actually. Murder on the Orient Express and all that. We love that stuff, man. That sounds like fun. I don't know about hosting one, though. That sounds like a lot of work. Officer Andy, what do you have coming up this week and this weekend?
How do you follow up to that?
How do I follow? What?
I could be going to the moon, and it wouldn't seem like anything compared to what she's planning.
I don't know. The moon would be legit. But, yeah, that is so awesome.
Let's see. Probably something family-wise. Try and get out and do some fat biking and stuff like that. So,
fat biking. That's just a bike with big tires, right?
It is.
Fun?
Oh, it's a blast.
What makes it more fun than just regular bike?
You kind of feel like a kid with a stomper truck. Did you ever have those when you were younger?
Okay, yeah, that's legit. I get where that would be fun.
Yeah, you run over stuff, and it's like, I don't know, you're out in the woods, and on a lot of it is groomed trails and stuff like that. So I love biking, I love cycling. So being able to do it in the winter, not on a trainer like a hamster, is a lot of fun.
Yeah, awesome, guys. Thanks so much for taking the time to come on.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Special thank you to our guest today, Rice Lake Liaison Officer, Officer Andy in Rice Lake School District's Stacia Cross, for jumping on for a chat today. I'll be right back on Tuesday when Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald and I will be doing our latest live episode of the Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy Show. So until then, for DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden saying thank you for watching, and as always, have a blessed day.